Welcome to the podcast of the American Diversity Report, where we interview innovative change makers and creative people who make a difference. I'm Deborah Levine, the editor and your host, and with me today is Rachelle Zola. Rachelle is a storyteller and advocate for racial equity. Known for her 40-day hunger strike in 2021, urging Congress to pass H.R. 40 to create a commission to study reparations for African Americans. Recently, she completed an 825-mile pilgrimage from Chicago to Montgomery, performing her one-woman show, Late, a Love Story, which explores personal and collective stories about racism in America. Welcome, Rachelle.
Deborah, thank you so very much for having me today. This is very special. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, especially in these times when we're so overwhelmed by what's going on and we don't know what to say. But people like you and me, we persevere. So let's begin by letting our audience know a little bit about you. Tell us, where are you from and how did you get in this situation?
It's been a zigzag of a ride. So I'm 76 years old. I was born in Brooklyn, and at the age of 9, my family moved us to Long Island, and that's where I was raised. I went to school in Buffalo. I got my master's in special education. I've traveled quite a bit. And besides this 825-mile walk, I actually walked in Shikoku, Japan, Shikoku Island, Japan, walked a 700-mile trek. And how this came about, there was a big change in my life. I actually was divorced after 40 years of marriage, and it's like, okay, what am I doing? He was the love of my life. I am the one that left, so I need to make that clear. We just had different paths. And in that, this is where I landed up. I've always been an advocate. I've been an advocate for children with special needs. I have a younger brother, and that's where that came from. And you don't mess with my kid brother, you know? And I got this calling in 2019 that I was supposed to go to Chicago. I had been living out of the country. I was in Ecuador for a year, 2016 to 2017, helping out at a children's home, an orphanage of sorts where children who had been abused or didn't have family. That's where they went. I had traveled there in 2016. I fell in love with this home and said, I have to go back. I went back to Tucson where I was living. I packed, sold my treasures, and left with a couple of duffel bags and moved to Ecuador. And that's where I was for a year. And after that, you had to leave. I only had a visitor's visa. I traveled some to, where was I? So I went to Peru for a few weeks and hung out with some shamans. And then I went back into Mexico. And then a friend of mine had asked for help. Her husband had passed away and said, where are you going next? What is the universe telling you? And when I was 59, I went to the Peace Corps, joined the Peace Corps, and I was in Jordan. So I was actually thinking Ecuador, Jordan, and it was like, well, I guess I'm going to Tucson. So I landed up in Tucson, and then, as I mentioned, I do get callings, and it was like, you need to go to Chicago. And Deborah, I had no connections. I didn't know anyone there. I'd never been there. And the only thing I knew was that I was supposed to go be engaged with Black and brown people and listen. That's what I did. I drove there, I rented a room for a week, and then I met my landlord knew I was supposed to move into this basement apartment just because we were like family. And as I tell him I play, I said nothing romantic, and he's very cute. You know? And so from day one, literally, I started going into the community, and I gravitated just naturally into the Black community. And I just went to every workshop, every training, conference, church service, community meeting, whatever anyone told me, I went. And people began to ask, rightfully so, who is this 71-year-old white woman? And why is she here? And I didn't even know. I didn't know. All I knew is I was supposed to be there. And then it became very clear I was supposed, because of my showing up, they began sharing their lived experiences with me. Stories I didn't know about, stories I never thought about. And then it was really clear I'm supposed to share this with other people that look like me, white. COVID hit. And so I'm thinking, and my friends were very supportive of it. They were, I said, I'm supposed to tell people. And they said, yes, please do. We've been sharing. They're not listening. They think we're complaining. They think we're exaggerating. If you do it, you'll get an opening that we're not able to get. And unfortunately, that's true. I wish that wasn't, and it is true. And for many cases, not all the time, obviously, but so they really encouraged me to share. So I got on YouTube because I couldn't go anywhere. I'm thinking I'm going everywhere there's white people. Not so much. And so I started doing YouTube. Then I started my own Zoom call with a very diverse group of people. And in that, one of the men, Will, said to me, who's so probably 10 years younger than me, said, I never thought I'd think about reparations in my lifetime. And so all of a sudden I'm researching reparations. And again, this was a calling. I wasn't planning ever to think that I was ever going to do a hunger strike, but I did a 40-day hunger strike for reparations. And the reason for that, people kept saying, well, what do you want? And I kept telling people, I said, I'm not the one that needs to talk about the reparations. That's for the Black community to tell us what we need to do. What I wanted was the commission, which was to study and develop reparation proposals. And I want, and I still do, one history in the United States, one truth, not a truth in Texas and Florida and New York and Vermont. That's what I so desperately wanted, was to say, let's have this commission so everyone can hear this from the federal government. This is our background. This is our history. So that's where that came from. And I stayed in the community but I had these stories. And I was like, how do I get out these stories? And I went to Theater Y, which is a theater group in west side of Chicago in North Lawndale. And they're there. And they just moved to that location. They've been around for 18 years. Melissa Lorraine is the co-founder and artistic director. I went to her. I met her the week earlier because she had a performance that she directed there in North Lawndale. I met her and we just had this connection. She's much younger, probably like 30 years younger, white woman. And she does a lot of work with racial justice. She works in the prison system. We just had a connection. And then I had this idea. I had to do a one-woman play. I'm not an actor, never been an actor. I went to her, said, I have an idea. I have an idea. I told her my idea, and she said, I'm all in. I want to do this. I want to create a play for you, sharing your stories. And we did. It took a year to do that. And like she said to me, she said, I've never done this before, and definitely never had anyone come to me without even an outline. It was just what I want to do. And it took a little over a year to make it happen. And so the first time I performed the show was in October of 2023. But that summer, it was like, okay, how are you going to share this play? And she said to me, we're on the rooftop of the building of the theater. And she said, are you supposed to walk? And I was like, yes, I'm supposed to walk. And so that's how it came together.
Wow.
And yes, and I thought I was going to walk the very next day in October, and then I realized about a week earlier that I wasn't prepared emotionally or mentally to walk. They had asked me, her and her friend Emily Bragg, who actually co-wrote the play with me, kept digging into my past. It was like, just like you're doing now, but my past, it was like, well, they have to get to know you, Rachelle. You just can't share their stories without, who's this white woman? And they kept asking me to go back and go back and go back. and it brought up a lot. And then I realized it's like, you're not ready to go anywhere. So I actually started walking on April 2nd of 2024 of this year. And then it was like people kept saying, well, wait till the winter's over. So that's where it was like, okay, let's wait.
Yes, especially when you're in Chicago. Yeah.
Well, yes, especially going through Chicago. And so it took 6 months. We planned on 6 months trip, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
I bet it
I
was.
walked the whole time. When I'd walk 10 miles a day. I had an RV. That's where I slept, in the RV. And it
Wow.
was,
My goodness. 6 months of walking 10 miles a day. No wonder you look so young.
I don't know about that, but it was it was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time.
I'm sure.
It was.
Along the way, what did you run into? What did surprised you most?
I walked. So what I did know, I walked with a backpack in the past. This was not going to happen. I had too much. I had equipment. I had a lot of things. So that was the reason for the RV. But even just walking, I walked with a shopping cart. So the shopping cart says, ask me why I'm walking. I had signage on me, ask me why I'm walking. And so while I was walking, people would actually stop their cars, turn around, whip around, stop me on the sidewalk. And I was hoping that people would want to engage with me. Illinois is a very long state. I didn't realize how long it was until I planned this. Almost half the trip was in Illinois. And so what I would always say, I'm walking for racial equity. Can I tell you what that means to me? So I would say that all in one breath so they couldn't stop me at equity. No, no. Can I tell you what it's going to mean to? And what surprised me was each time they allowed me to share a story. They really did. And I was in small communities that said, we don't have to think about this. We're all white. And I said, we're a small town. I said, excuse me, I grew up in New York, not such a small town. And I didn't know these stories. And in that sense, it gave me credibility too. I mean, the whole way it was like, no, I didn't know white people. I lived in a white bubble on Long Island.
Where
So
in Long Island did you live?
the town I lived in was Plainview, Nassau County.
So I grew up
I
in
was
Great Neck.
there from 60 in 66. So
So I grew up in Great Neck, not far from you.
not far at all.
Yeah.
Road down the
Yes.
road. So what was surprising and being an election year, some people would ask me who I was voting for, and I said, I'm not looking to be this is for me, this isn't a political issue. So can I just share with you why I believe in, equity and liberation? And they actually allowed me to share that. So that was also a surprise all the time, because everybody's got, oh, this is going to be a tough country for you to go down. And so what I tell people all the time is there's so much love out there. And I think that's really, really important to hear that today. I was met with such love the whole time.
Wow.
Even if they didn't believe, some people said that, there isn't racism in this country. I've spoken to my Black friends, there aren't. Even if they're saying that, there was never pushback. There was always, I think it was because I was walking, that people like, you're willing to walk for this, no matter who I met, whatever their ethnicity was, whatever their background, whatever their religion. And I met from every walk of life. It was like, you're willing to walk and share these stories. And one of the things I always mention this one man in particular, probably in his late 40s, early 50s. And I knew he saw things world differently than me from the little bit he said. But I shared the stories, and I'll give a couple examples of my friend worrying about even walking into a restaurant and waiting 15 minutes or 20 minutes before they even got any water, any acknowledgement. Me, I walk in, hi, how are you? And they sit me down and give me a glass of water without even thinking, right? I have friends who still to this day will walk in with me and they scan the area, feeling if they're going to be safe. I have friends, oh my goodness, she's 15 years younger than me. And this just happened a year ago, walking through a store and being followed around so blatantly. And finally, she turned around and said, I'm not a thief, go away. So things like that, I could go in dirty, grubby, and I've never been stopped because I have gone in dirty, grubby. you know? And so but I wasn't thinking of these stories. And so this man said, he said, I didn't know that. I wasn't thinking of those stories either. And I asked him, would you share these stories with others? He took my card. I get back, after my walking, and there his name shows up on Facebook. And he has shared this story. I had a humbling conversation with this woman today. And like 105 people of his friends responded, how awesome. Thank you. So that's what happened all the way along. But that one happened pretty early on. And that surprised me that it didn't put him off. He really said, and I didn't really think he would, right? Okay, he took my card. People take cards. And that was surprising all the way along. The other surprise was when people met me, especially later on, I only had a driver for 11 weeks. You can stop me if I need you want me to stop me.
No, go for it.
So I had a driver for only 11 weeks. So he would drop me off 10 miles up the road. He'd pick me up. We'd find a place to sleep. He'd drop me off again the next morning wherever I was going. So then I didn't have a driver. And I didn't know how to drive the RV. I didn't want to ever learn how to drive an RV. And all of a sudden it's like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get down the road? And somebody taught me how to drive an RV. I needed to get some repair on it. And this man, Greg, he graciously taught me, he said, you're going to need how to learn how to drive this. He said, you know how to drive a car, right? I said, yes. He said, what's the problem here? It's big. It's 25 feet long. That's the problem. Uh, so he taught me how to drive it, how to make a right turn, a left turn. And so I did that. But the thing was, so I could drive someplace, but I had to stop it and I still had to walk.
Yeah.
And I'd share my story and they became my angels. I call them my angels. They said, we hear you're on this mission and we want to participate. So so they did. They sort of adopted me. One woman adopted me for 5 days of walking. That's 50 miles. So Susan actually dropped me off, and I had the church that they let me stay at for the 5 days. She'd pick me up at the church where my RV was, take me to where I stopped walking, and come and get me 10 miles later, which was usually 5, 6 hours later. I would stop, talk to people. If you just walking on my own, it wouldn't take me 6 hours to walk 10 miles. But I was always stopping and talking to people or taking pictures or making a TikTok video. So I was always doing something or getting an email out. She would come out the 10 miles and drive me back to my RV. The next day, she would drive me out those 10 further miles. I would walk another. So now I'm out 20 miles. She'd come and get me. And so she did that for 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what people and other people housed me. I didn't have an RV for a while, and some people actually housed me while I was walking and then take me. So that piece, so everywhere I went, there was always somebody who was willing to say, park your car here, your RV here. I'll come and get you and I'll pick you up later. Or they found someone else. So did that surprise me? Talk about showing up. I'm used to showing up. Obviously, I showed up enough that people trusted me with their stories. And for me to have that, a stranger just on the road, I mean, people
Yeah.
stopped me and said, this one woman in particular, another woman, the same thing. She just said, I hear you're on a mission. I want to get you to, at that point, I was trying to get to Selma. And she said, I want to get you there. So
Good.
yeah, what can I say? The love is just abundance of love.
And I guess that's one of the things you learned along the way.
You know, I knew there was love. And this is beyond that. It really, and it's so nice because of the election. There are people so angry and there's angst and fear. And I know that whatever that fear comes from, underneath that, everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be heard. I learned that when I came to Chicago. What happened is that I became a witness for these Black people who hadn't, I was surprised that that was a big surprise. I thought they had places, other white people. I'm not the first white person. I mean, my goodness, people have been doing this for centuries, right? But I was the white person for them. And I listened, and they thanked me for just listening, not denying them, not questioning, not defending myself. That's huge. And I didn't realize, to give you an example, when I first got there to Chicago, a Black woman who's a dear friend of mine, Maisel now, she came up to me, and the first time she saw me, then she saw me again, and then she saw me something at another event, and she came up to me and said, "You give me hope." And I said, "I haven't done anything." And she said, "You showing up." I
Ah,
went home and bawled. The bar was so low, it felt like my showing up.
I understand fully. Yes, indeed. Amazing. Well, here we are in such interesting times. What's next for you?
The play will continue, this one woman show. That was the reason how this all started in the first place. And I'll just tell you a little bit about the show. It has three distinct parts. Act one really is my story, how I got here, some of my trauma. And act two is mostly, it's a PowerPoint of my friends' stories. They're unscripted, which people always like. I went to my friends and said, look, you know, I'm going to take this on the road. I'm getting on a Zoom call, just like we are doing right now, recorded it, whatever they want. I said, whatever you want the world to know, tell me now, and I'll make a story around it. So that's what I did. So that's what Act Two is. I'll give you an example. Stanley, he had gone on a business trip in the 90s. And like he says, I guess they didn't know I was Black. And he went into the bathroom and it said the N-word, go home. And then he left in a couple of days because it didn't improve. And he talks about, he was afraid. He said, he called his mom and actually said, I'm afraid, am I going to get lynched here? I mean, that's how fearful he was.
Ow.
And so after he shares the story, his voice and his picture, I then talk about lynchings. So whatever they talked about, like Will talked about reparations, so I talk some about reparations. So I kept talking about what I learned because in this bubble of mine, this unpenetratable, I mean, it just, right? It was just, I never thought about it. And I tell them that in the play, which is really important. And that's what I will keep sharing. The play is 3 hours long because it has act one, it has act two, the PowerPoint, the stories, and then there's a talk back where we actually sit and reflect on what we've learned, what we want to share about our lives, what we heard, you know, through this production.
Good.
And why I will continue that is because each time, mostly been black and white. This last one was more diverse with Asian, and we had more Latino, more population come this last one. But what I get every time is thank you for creating this space. And a big piece of it is I always do it in a circle. So we're in a restorative circle. If people are familiar with that term, if not, it's a wonderful thing. I have some curiosity and look it up. Restorative justice circles. So I'm part of the circle. I'm not in the middle. I'm part of the circle. And then we go around and we just talk and people, that's another surprise. I mean, you'd ask me what is surprising me. People say, I've never sat in circle before. And it changes dynamics. No chairs, well, you're sitting on a chair, no table, nothing dividing us. We're just looking at each other. And people have said how powerful just the circle is to connect with people. And each time we did that, especially the Black people said, thank you for allowing us this space. For white people, it was thank you for shedding some light on my ignorance. And other people that knew about it said, thank you. I obviously need to do more.
Good. That's excellent. Oh my goodness.
So what's next? So it's a 3-hour thing. That's a lot of time for people to commit. So I would like to make myself a presentation, an hour presentation. I'd like to make myself a 20-minute presentation. I will travel to wherever it takes. The play is always free. And, people just host me, organizations host me. And right now, I'm sure there's more. One of the things I definitely do, and I would love to just share with your audience, is that if they go to my website, late.love, Late, and how we got the play's name is Late, a Love Story. And I will explain that. So I'm late. The country is late. And as I explained earlier, when Melissa and Emily were asking me to go back, I started looking at my journal and then I'm looking at all the journaling that I've done since I've been here. I've been here now 5 years in Chicago. So this was 3 years ago. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is a love story. And so that's the name of the play, Late, a Love Story. And then the brand is Late Love. So my website is late.love. And if you get on there, you will see right now we do a community circle on a Zoom call. Nothing in person right now. That's a Zoom call. And it's just people that want to get together and know they're not alone and share who they are. And it's this December 9th from 6:30 to 8. That's Central Time. I live in Chicago. So that's we'll see what's, before we even got on, I said to you, people ask why. I say, I know better, so I do better. So, that's what I'm hoping for everyone. I'm hoping when they come to my play that they have a curiosity for more. Because what happened for me is that I met the people, then I read the books, not the other way around. And now when I read the books, the pages come alive, right? I'm part of this living history that I wasn't even thinking about. It's not easy to say, and I say my play and I will say it's a tribute to people of Chicago and beyond that so many deem as invisible, dismiss, and or hate because of the color of their skin. I never even thought about them. I didn't consider their lives, their lived experiences, the depth of the harm and trauma they experience every day. And every day, it's hard for me to say it. And every day it's necessary because until we all say that, those that are like me, until we say that, we're not going to dismantle systemic racism. And that's what I want to do.
Thank you. I really appreciate it and all you've done. And before we wrap this up, would you please repeat your website?
It's late, Late dot love, Love. No com, just late.love.
Okay. Well, audience, you've heard this. It's time for you to go and check it out and consider what kind of world you want to live in and how you are going to get there. And that's what Rachelle is all about. And it's wonderful to hear from you, your stories, your journey, your purpose. and I am inspired myself. And I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity to talk together.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing, which I don't
Please
want to
do.
forget? One of the things I did, and please, I'm challenging all of you to do it when you meet someone, say to them, "What do you want me to know about you?" And tell you what, they tell me all the time.
I
And if
love
you know the person, say to them, "What do you want me to know about you today?" You will be amazed if you just, with this one person, that's the other surprise. It was just took my breath away. People want to be heard. They have a story to tell. So please, I challenge you to do that. You'll be so thrilled you did.
Okay, audience, you've heard it. Uh, and if any of you want to comment on the comment box below this podcast, please feel free to share your thoughts and your stories with us. Thank you so much, Rachelle. Thank you, audience, for tuning in again. We will be back.
Deborah, thank you.
Take care.